Welcome to the New Ventures podcast. Our guest for today is Sunil Yadav, the head of building performance and sustainability in Siemens Singapore. Welcome, Sunil. Let's start by talking about decarbonization. Maybe it'll help to provide our listeners some idea of how it evolved, how decarbonization as an offering evolved from the more well-known energy efficiency offerings that Siemens is known for.
Thank you, Sanjoy. And first of all, thank you so much for having me here. Let me talk about in today's disruptive world and any organization's ability to grow its business while reducing the carbon footprint is the key sustainable competitiveness now. And this is why, because in 2015, the world has signed the Paris Agreement, and Siemens has actually announced as the world's first major industrial company to be achieving carbon neutrality or net zero footprint for its own operation by 2030. And this is what we have done for ourselves. So what we practice is what we preach for our customers. So we actually talk about this, and we everybody know about it. We are there's nothing left as a secret that 1.5 degrees is the world which we can sustain. More than that, it's not going to sustainable for us, for our children's, and maybe for their children's. So we are talking about a world where climate change is the biggest business issue, a business problem or business challenge we have in front of leaders. And one of the way we aim to achieve is this by changing how we consume and buy energy. And we have solutions which is like what we call it total energy management, wherein we talk about reduce and procure together. So when I say reduce, there are technology which actually help to reduce energy consumption. There are technology which actually help to produce energy as close to as possible to the load, which is on-site energy generation. And we also talk about their technology which actually get seamless power procurement, which is green and renewable. And all this is not done as like one-time effort. It is a continuous effort, and this is done through the digitalization on top of it. And to do this all, what Siemens is doing actually, we are actually trying to bring this with the innovative financial solutions so that it is easy for customer to adopt it. And this is how things are moving on decarbonization, and most of the larger organizations actually supporting this. So we call it total energy management as the best approach to our client, where the world's reduce their energy and operating cost plus their carbon.
So this is obviously a very useful framework to have. I mean, reduce is the energy efficiency part of it. Produce is the renewable energy part of it. And then on top of that, you have digitalization, which kind of measures and tracks. And then you have financing as the fourth component. Conceptually, this is, I think, great and easy to understand. So let's talk about a potential customer. And if you, for example, were on a call with him or her today, how can you help them work with Siemens?
Yeah, so first of all, this market is getting more towards this green economy. You name the bank, you name the private equity, everybody is actually on the same direction because first of all, we are not doing enough for decarbonization. And not Siemens, but everyone. We are not enough. It's not enough. The ice is still melting. What we should do it, and one of the biggest barrier is financing. And what Singapore market is doing is actually trying to remove this barrier. And customers are talking about more OPEX model than CAPEX. And it's a mixed feeling. Let me give you an example of hospitality. So hotels has went through we everybody know that because of this COVID situation, world has moved and the hospitality industry has moved to a direction where they're struggling with the financial numbers. What they continue have to improve their facility so that when they open up, they are fully secure, safe, and reliable to have accommodate the guests. So in order to have that large retrofit or renovations, they actually going for OPEX model now, and which they were not so open before COVID. So that's a direction actually happening. At the same time, not only hotel which are actually into in the industry which is into trouble, but there are industry which are growing, and they're also having the same challenge that they should focus this money into their core operations or they should put into decarbonization. So thanks to open financing and OPEX model, I believe, I mean, I love this word, anything as a service or energy as a service or a decarbonization as a service. So the world is moving towards as a service model, and this is good for society. I mean, as a business, it is good, and this is sustainable also. So I personally feel that customers are moving towards it, and it has its own challenge. I mean, it's not so straightforward that any customer will say is, yeah, I need financing, and you do that, and the cost of capital they're ready to pay. So this is a journey which is actually comes with the similar way of experience. It is not what you're selling, it is how you're selling. I think that's more important. And how is largely a topic of, I would say, it's a subjective topic that comes with relationship, trust, credibility, and other stuff. And when it comes to OPEX model, that became more, I mean, it's a higher importance.
I think that's very useful to understand because you kind of help put the financing in place for an OPEX model. Also, but going back to the other two components that you talked about, energy efficiency and producing on site, and then on top of that, the digitalization, those are the core technology offerings. So perhaps you might want to elaborate on those three things, on the technology offerings a little.
Yeah, perfect. So Siemens got technology on every, I'll say these are the three spheres: reduce, produce, and procure. And there's a larger sphere on top of it called digitalization. So each sphere has its own technology, a set of technology, I would say. When I say reduce, anything and everything which consume energy, there is a technology Siemens has that can actually improve the efficiency of that particular machine. I'm not talking about reducing the consumption, but improving the efficiency of the system, which is to give the same output, it'll take less kilowatt. I mean, the closest example generally we have, and in any building or any industrial setup, the largest, or I would say the major energy guzzler is cooling system. And in cooling system, when you talk about a chiller plant, we talk about the efficiency improvement, which is kilowatt per ton, rather than kilowatt hours, which is consumption. So we have technology called demand flow, which is Siemens patented technology, quite powerful and quite proven technology across the world, more than 700 installations across the world. And that improves the efficiency of existing chiller plants, or existing whole system is not required to replaced. And when I say not required to replace, we're talking about the embedded carbon reduction. So we are not asking customers to replace their chillers to improve the efficiency. We are actually improving the efficiency of the existing chiller plants. And in result, we are actually avoiding to buy a new chiller, which actually comes with a lot of embedded carbon, because the chillers take its own steel and carbons to construct and transport to the site, which we are avoiding and keeping the efficiency same as a new machines. So that's first thing. And then anything and everything which consume energy, like lighting. So we have solution like Enlighted, which is Siemens company now, which is a lighting control company, which actually help to save up to 70 to 75% of lighting energy. And lift, escalator, motor, pumps, anything and everything which consume energy, Siemens got technology. VSD drives, we got our own energy efficient motors, which actually take largely inductive loads into the system. So that's the reduce part. We got, and then next part, what we call it, produce. So on-site generation is important for us, because energy is the only field, I believe, or only industry where whatever you produce, it gets consumed immediately. I mean, even if you produce more, it gets consumed, because there's always a consumption available, and energy is such a commodity which is get consumed. And in order to decouple this, what we need to do is we need to actually first ensure that we actually produce it on site, so that we avoid transmission and distribution losses. And then we also need to decouple with the generation and energy use. So if it is solar, we say solar is only for the day. How about night? Why not we actually add solar with storage and microgrid on top of it, so that you can decouple and you can utilize the solar day and night, both sides. So that's what we're trying to give more sustainable solutions. And just to give an example, the new load which is added to grid now, called EV, electric vehicles. So this load was not there a few years back, and this is additional load is on the grid now. How to handle that? So right solution is basically EV plus PV plus storage plus microgrid controller on top of it, so that there's no additional stuff, additional load going to the grid, but you handle actually at the building or industry at the load point itself, and avoid all kind of transmission distribution losses. And Siemens got technology from solar inverter to EV charger to microgrid controllers to energy storage. So we got for producing anything and everything plus the balance of plant. So we are, I mean, we got a full of, I mean, Siemens is largely a technology company. We are full of that technology in that part. And when it comes to digitalization, I believe we are one of the pioneer in digitalization, where we have our own operating system called MindSphere, and then we have our own cloud solutions, or Desigo CC, or on the cloud itself as a BMS as a service, or automation as a service. All these are actually adding easiness to the customers to adopt for digitalization, or a journey of digitalization, where not only improve the operational efficiency of the plant or a building, but also it actually saves a lot of energy, which is actually turned down to dollar and cents. And at the end of the day, we are actually reducing the carbon from the footprints. So it's a win-win-win solution from Siemens side.
I think you have done a great job in describing all the four components: the digitalization technology, the energy efficiency, the reduction part of it, the production part of it, and of course the financing part of it. But customers also require services, right? I can well imagine that a customer in his or her early stage of decarbonization would simply need a lot of services to understand, how to go about that path. So what type of services does Siemens provide in the decarbonization area?
Oh, so Sanjoy, so we are the, I believe I would suggest there might be other companies who are doing it, but we do end-to-end a holistic service for decarbonization, starting from the consulting to design and planning to implement, and then own and operate and service, plus our long-term monitoring contract with customer, so that it's not only we achieve one time, we ensure that we not only achieve decarbonization or a net zero, we actually focus towards negative carbon, or basically a world where we are actually consuming less and utilizing more. So that's what we are thinking of, and this is what our direction is. And we start the journey with the customer from the consulting, where we actually sit down with them and guide them, or what is the first step towards this sustainability journey or decarbonization journey. And we actually create a framework or a program for the next 5 years, for example, or 10 years. They want to be carbon neutral by 2030, as like Siemens. So Siemens has actually done this in 2015, and we are at 2020. We are already at 54% of our journey, and we have to be carbon neutral by 2030. So journey, what we have done for ourselves, we can actually suggest the same thing for our customers. And the consulting is where we actually help the customer for baselining first, how much you're consuming, total carbon you're consuming, which is including their embedded and operational both, for scope 1 and scope 2 to start with. And then from there, we actually help them or design their glide path, how they will achieve from this baseline to the zero. And largely what we do is we talk about the major levers or pillars of decarbonization, like energy efficiency, on-site energy generation, or procuring the green energy. With distillation, we try to help some replace some fuels, or changing from natural gas or fossil fuel to towards electrifications, because electricity can be handled through renewable. But as of now, there's no renewable fuel available with us. I mean, we all are eyeing on hydrogen, but I'm not sure how long it will take to commercialize it. But we are all eyeing on that till the time electricity can be renewable, and we are actually putting all our efforts to electrifying stuff, and then ensuring that they're running properly into energy efficient manner, and we're producing on site to avoid any losses. And then this is how we are actually helping the journey. And the last 1% or 1.5% or a small percentage of energy which we see, that can be actually done through certifications. So that's also we do.
Okay, that's great to understand the end-to-end customer service. So my next question automatically is, what is the type of customer demand that you're seeing? And you already obviously talked about the hospitality industry in Singapore, but if you can tell us a little bit more about customers in Singapore who are starting this journey with you.
First of all, this is everybody's requirement now. We're not doing enough. All of us not doing enough. Everybody is going through that same direction, and this time this is of higher importance because this became a part of the ESG agenda, and this became a push from the investors. But most important for everyone to do their part because we are seeing that the companies or organization or industry which are not putting efforts on decarbonization, they see reduction on their clients, their customer, their revenue, and they're seeing the impact. And at the same time, in the latest study says that actually climate change is the biggest business challenge we have now. I mean, and leaders understand that, and this is what we're seeing that this is how the whole thing is driving through. I see that COVID actually helped this whole thing to drive this further because whatever we do here in COVID, but we at least get some kind of self-realization over this time that nature is much bigger than all of us together. And we need to ensure that we actually start to live with the nature rather against the nature because earth is not into a problem, we are into problem. Earth has seen all this multiple times, but this humankind has to see how we can actually assign ourselves to it. So I see on a personal level, I'm having conversation with customers. Actually, people are much more aware now. And thanks to the new generation, I would say that the young generation is much more aware and conscious about this, I would say.
I think all very interesting points. I'm just trying to sort of put them in my own head. One is, of course, the last point that you made, which is true about the younger generation clearly being more environmentally conscious than people like you and me, perhaps. The second point is that the realization that COVID, the disruptive realization that COVID has brought about to us that nature, you cannot really disrespect nature and get away with it. And the third part, which was really the first point that you made, which I thought was very interesting, that is the push from investors, push from ESG related investors that is coming on to companies. So all three are, I think, are very key drivers. In your position, you not only handle Singapore, but you also handle other parts of the Asian economy, which is, of course, got some really large urban centers. What are the type of customer driver that you're seeing in other Asian countries, other Asian regions?
Very interesting questions. I would say that if I see the global economy or a GDP growth, actually after China, US, and India, ASEAN is actually number 4 in terms of growth. But the question is like this whole ASEAN region is quite fragmented. So we have Singapore as a core hub of it, and where market is quite competitive, I would say that where everybody is eyeing on it, and large organization to SMEs, everybody is here, and it's quite competitive market in terms of getting into business of decarbonization with the help of OPEX model or different business model, wherein you have more supplier, I would say, rather than the demand. So you have a bit of competition here in Singapore. But there's a bigger market available in ASEAN, like Malaysia, like Thailand, that Indonesia, Vietnam, which is actually growing up a lot. So just to give an perspective that how is the market here in Singapore and how is the market outside Singapore in ASEAN region, I would say they're here in Singapore, it's more consolidated. Customer is educated and they know what they are doing, and they're actually they're happy to do experiments and some kind of, if there's something new to be done, it's a right playground or experiment ground, I would say. Wherein when you go to Malaysia, Indonesia, I would say it's very fragmented market. Who is doing business? If we talk about large organization like Siemens or competition around. So nobody has the major dominance in these markets, I would say. Everybody is actually trying to do that. And I mean, if you see in the pie chart, maybe the larger organizations are actually into the single digit or a very merely into double digit market share. But majority of, I would say 70% of the share is actually goes to others, which is fragmented market, very small players, and actually they're doing it and how they're managing it. So this is the situation in Malaysia and Indonesia. I mean, in fact, I would say in any developing countries, things which are actually growing up, they have the similar situation. So there are a lot of small SMEs actually trying to do the same space, and trying to capture the space which larger organizations used to do that. This situation comes, then it makes a lot of sense to go for what you call local for local. That makes a lot of sense. I would say Vietnam is a bit different market in whole ASEAN, wherein the growth is very inclusive rather than fragmented. Here in Indonesia, you will also have the similar thing. When it comes to electrification, I think the majority of the things are on the right track. Their electrification is done at the base of pyramid. The next piece on the pyramid, we call it automation. So that is on the way, I would say that. And the top of pyramid, we call it digitalization. So this is the hierarchy of or Maslow hierarchy of electrification. So we say base of the pyramid is electrification, and then automation, and then top of pyramid is digitalization. So every country is in on a different journey altogether. I would say Singapore is actually trying to forefront the digitalization now, wherein few part of the ASEAN is still don't have 100% electricity. I would say 100%. So they still have electrifications, which is actually around 98% or something somewhere around. And then they're actually trying to push on automation, and then top of it the digitalization. So everybody is trying to do their own part, and there are challenges in ASEAN where every 5 years they have some challenges.
Great. We're coming to the end of this podcast. So I'm very curious to learn about is data centers. Everybody knows they're energy guzzlers. And I know Siemens has solutions around this. So could you tell us a little bit about Siemens' solution in decarbonization of data centers in particular?
Oh, data center, Sanjoy, I mean, this is one of the key area which is very close to my heart, and I've spent a good amount of time and efforts and energy in data centers and building data center actually. So I was a project manager for data center design and build. And one of the core energy consumption apart from the IT load is which is actually evolving, and there's a new kind of servers coming up, then on-site things are coming up. One of the bigger guzzler which is happening across is been always there as air conditioning or cooling as a solutions. So how to avoid that, and apart from the IT load which is on the technology side, this PUE improvement, or how do we handle cooling. So Siemens got technology like demand flow for chiller plant optimizations, where we actually have either is water cooled, air cooled. We actually do it seamlessly to improve the energy efficiency. Around up to 50% potential is there without replacing any equipment on chiller plant side, and it goes seamlessly for the crack unit optimization inside, which is white space cooling optimization, or we call it inside the crack or air side optimization of the data centers without any impact on the SLAs and their requirement. And I have customers across ASEAN where we maintain fantastic SLAs without any impact on the comfort, or I would say that the SLA requirement. And we are saving on air side itself alone itself is around 40 to 45% of energy and efficiency improvement. And with this, the PUE actually has improved from almost around zero point 0.5 overall. I would say that from the where it was, and we have actually improved by zero point 0.5, which is a substantial number in terms of improving PUE or power utilization for a data center. So that's one. And then second thing which we talk about is that's the biggest thing. We invest in any data center, we call it DG or diesel generators, which is largely a dead asset actually. So they've been used only when there's a situation when power quality or a power is not available, or although these data centers comes with a different source of energy from different angle. I mean, if it is a tier 4 data center, especially a situation like Singapore, where power is reliability is there and resilience is there. With that, I mean, you have a large data center which has a large diesel generator sets, which are actually a redundant, or I would say the dead asset which is there. How do we handle that? So what we actually done is actually replacing this, or a portion of diesel generator has been replaced with energy storage. So we actually put energy storage with EV plus PV plus storage solutions along with the microgrid, so that system itself know when the data center load is low, or the consumption or consumption on IT side is low, we can actually start charging our batteries, and ensuring when there's an high requirement, they can actually, the dense data center is actually on high load, it can charge discharge itself without the need of any diesel. And that's what we can say the largest step towards decarbonization in a data centers. So we are actually trying to create a green data center by avoiding diesel's use, and actually not avoiding but reducing to a large extent to replace it with the batteries. And once we do that, we actually replace the batteries of requirement for the UPS also, because the same batteries which are being replaced for diesel generator, they can also be utilized for UPS, and then you don't need a separate battery bank for UPS. So that kind of embedded carbon is also been removed, and this whole story actually goes along with the TI 942, the protocols, and all kind of green certifications.
This is very interesting. Just so that I understand, you use the term PUE. Could you spell that out for our audience?
PUE. This is actually power utilization effectiveness of a data center. So it's basically the total IT load versus non-IT load, and depending on how we are utilizing the total power. So total power is what is actually been supplied to a data center, and how much portion of that is actually utilized for the IT load. So when you divide, you'll find the effectiveness of this power, and that's what generally we use as an indicator for data centers.
Right.
There's an calculations on this, but there are different ways of calculating it. But this is a general indicator, and that's something which we say the best data center is where every power, every kilowatt is being utilized by IT itself rather than auxiliaries on extra services. And this is what we do. We actually improve this to come closer to one. PUEs come closer to one.
Yeah, thank you for that. The other thing, of course, which is more substantiated, is the point that you made about replacing diesel with energy storage. Obviously, a lot of people will be interested in the economics. So energy storage, especially if you replace UPS batteries, the economics of that works out in favor of energy storage as opposed to diesel backup.
Certainly. It actually improve not only the one is basically the diesel storage requirement and different requirement and regulations for that, but at the same time, diesel is the carbon factor or the grid factor for diesel is super high compared to electricity, and we can charge this storage not necessarily from the grid itself. We can have on-site solar or wherever's location available on the rooftop of a data center. We try to utilize that space and see if we can actually put the charging through or a PV plus storage solution together along with the microgrid. So whenever there's a requirement, we can actually do the load shading accordingly. And when actually we do the complete economics of removing the battery bank of UPS and actually putting a large battery bank or a large battery storage in order to avoid diesel generators and the battery bank. End of the day, it's in the OPEX model. This makes more sense to have a large energy storage on site rather than a dead asset like diesel generators, which is there. Recently done a data center, just to give an example, wherein you have 3000 kVA, almost 3000 kVA, like 8 DG sets, which is only will kick in only when there's a power issues, and that power issues hardly happen in Singapore. So in that situation, how do we ensure that we actually handle this properly? And there's a lot of energy required to bring this diesel set to the site and construct diesel sets. So can we avoid that with a clean way of doing it? And in case there is a power disruption, you can always have a clean and power supplies. And believe me, when there's a power fluctuation happens, energy storage is 100 times faster response than the diesel generator sets. Just to give a perspective.
Right. So operational effectiveness as well as cost effectiveness. My last question is, your company's APAC headquarters is Singapore. You personally have been in Singapore for a long time. How does being located in Singapore help? In particular, what are the types of things that you can do in Singapore that you could not have done elsewhere?
Singapore is a land of opportunities. First of all, as I rightly said, if you have something new, you want to experiment and you want to do something, people are very receptive about it. And if you have a new technology, you want to really, pitch in and want to do an POC, people are quite receptive about it and they want to give you opportunity. I've seen customers who say like, even if you have the concept level, you want to do it, trial out, no problem. So that's something which is there available. The second thing is, I believe Singapore is well respected on the region itself, in the ASEAN region itself, and we call it gateway to Asia. So once you are proven here, it became much easier for you to go and take this case study to rest of the ASEAN. People actually respect that credibility. And once you have that credibility, people start trusting you. You become a trusted advisor. So Singapore actually play an important role while driving the whole ASEAN economy in a way, because what we do here, it can be easily preached inside the ASEAN's other regions. So it makes a lot of sense actually. So I personally feel it's a one thing which you cannot do anywhere else. You can do only in Singapore, and thanks to all kind of ecosystem, I would say that if you want to start up a company, if you want to get into a, I would say, hackathon, or some kind of a smaller way of getting into it and want to make it large, I think Singapore is the right market to start your business. The whole ecosystem actually support you. So starting from the government to the infrastructure to support in terms of your customers, and completely all the stakeholders in this whole journey, from banks to the service provider, everybody is actually linked to it, and it's quite digitalized in a way that you don't feel that it is a hassle. In fact, just to give an idea, you can actually register your company in one day, and you can start operation from the day two. So it's so easy to do business. I mean, I would say in the, if you see the ease of doing business index, Singapore is actually on the top of it. And so it's always been trying to do ease of doing business, and which is not possible in rest of the world, I would say. That's the reason I feel that this is what unique thing Singapore offer. And other economical culture efforts, which is actually make it more unique, because it gives a lot of opportunity for people to innovate and flourish. And the society is quite receptive about it.
With that, thank you very much, Sunil, for joining us today.
Thank you, Sanjoy. Thank you so much for having me.